So welcome everybody. That's right. This is the second November event. It's our members only event, the Ultimate Behavioral Change Framework, building products the 3B way with Pauline, who's in the house today. If you haven't come to one of Pauline's earlier presentations, my gosh, she is a behavioral scientist at Irrational Labs. Her work focuses on applying behavioral insights for public health, including building a Medicaid-approved kidney dialysis program in the United States, because she's Canadian. So she highlights how exotic our country is, fellow Americans, increasing medication adherence for Parkinson's disease, and increasing COVID-19 vaccine uptake in Kenya, Syria, and North Africa. Prior to joining Irrational Labs, she launched a health practice at BE Works and was a featured speaker at Mayo Clinic's Transform 2019 conference. She earned her BS, and that's a Bachelor's of Science, not the other kind of BS, in psychology from Queen's University, and an MS in global health cum laude from McMaster University. For those of you that aren't maple syrup heads or are big hockey fans, McMaster, very cool university in Canada, super prestigious and brilliant, just like Pauline. In her downtime, every time I read this, I'm like, oh, you enjoy scuba diving, because I always forget this, and ballet dancing. When I saw her last, we did neither, for the record. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm passing the mic to the one and only Pauline. Take it away.
Wow, thank you so much, Ryan. I always love your introductions. I feel like you should always be my hype man.
I'm going to get a clock around my neck. And then, yes, I will follow you everywhere in scuba gear, ballet clothing, whatever you need.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for taking your Friday afternoon or morning to sort of spend with us at Irrational Labs. In this talk today, we're going to kind of go through three elements here. So I hope that you walk away, knowing why you need behavioral frameworks, understanding which frameworks exist, and then knowing how to use specific frameworks. So we're going to talk about the 3B framework and why we think it can be really helpful, particularly for product design. And I hope you walk away knowing how you might be able to use this in your day-to-day. So let's start with a little example here. Is anyone familiar with the company Shoes of Prey? If you're not, this was an industry trailblazing company that was in the shoe business. So basically what they were aiming to do is they were trying to offer shoppers different ways to customize their own footwear. And one of the main tenets that this company really had is that they asked customers, and they would conduct these focus group discussions to understand how customers wanted their shoes to be customized. And time again, they'd hear from these focus group discussions that people wanted more. I don't want just the heel to be customizable. I also want the color, and I want the size of the heel, and the shape of the heel. And so, of course, what did the company do? Well, they actually listened to their customers and followed what they said and allowed for more customizability options. Now, this is a tactic that many companies do, right? We listen to our customers and then we go, okay, this is what the customer said, the client said, this is what we're going to do. What ended up happening was that in 2019, early 2019, the company actually ended up filing for bankruptcy. So they listened to their customers and they still were not able to successfully continue their business. Now, the question is, what did Shoes of Prey do wrong? That seems like a fairly great strategy. Many companies do that. And what we would say is that they didn't follow a behavioral framework when they were updating their product. So they really relied on the common assumption that more choice is better, and that customers and clients and people really know what they want, and they only looked at the surface level instead of diving deeper into what might be some of the subconscious reasons around why people select certain shoes and how decision-making around shoe design works. So they really focused on focus group discussions. Had they used a behavioral science framework or a behavioral framework, they likely would have come to a very different conclusion. And the reason being is because behavioral frameworks really force companies and scientists to understand and better retrieve what's going on as subconscious drivers of human behavior. So we're not only relying on what people say when we ask them in qualitative interviews, but we're really trying to understand what are the contextual factors in someone's decision-making environment that might actually alter their choices. And it may alter their choices in a way that they have no idea, so they can't actually report back to you on it. So frameworks can be really useful because they can help create an exhaustive list of all of these potential drivers. Basically, when we're using any framework, we're pulling in all of the potential cognitive biases, psychologies, enablers that are maybe potentially occurring in a specific decision-making pattern. And then we're really honing in on where we think the bottlenecks are within that journey and pulling out the psychologies that we really want to focus on. And this allows us to help solve a variety of problems. And it also probably would have helped Shoes of Prey. So if Shoes of Prey had used this behavioral framework or any behavioral framework, they probably would have come across a cognitive bias known as choice overload bias. And I know many of you are taking the membership course right now. If you haven't heard of this bias, this is a cognitive bias that is really well documented in the psychological literature. And it is a bias that tells us that when people face multiple options, they actually tend to have decision paralysis. So we prefer to not choose at all. And if we do choose, we often experience higher levels of regret. So we select one item and then we regret that selection because there were so many other options that we could have chosen and we're not sure if it was the right call. The best sort of scientific or the most classic scientific example of this is the JAM study. And what they did in the JAM study is they put a free samples table in a grocery store. And one grocery store had a free samples table that had 6 choices of jams. So it was a small choice set that people could taste and then decide to purchase a jam if they liked it. And another table had a large choice set. So this was 24 types of jams that people could try and taste and potentially purchase. Now the question is, what do we think happened? What did grocery patrons do when they were faced with either the small choice set or the large choice set? What's interesting is more people were actually drawn to the table that had a large choice set. You had significantly more people actually going to the free samples when there was more free samples or more options of free samples. But when we look at the purchase behavior, the people who were way more likely to purchase were the ones who were provided with the smaller choice set. So it just really helped people understand what their choices should be. It minimized the choice field and allowed people to select a jam that they felt really comfortable and confident in instead of being a bit having decision paralysis, not being quite sure, and then deciding not to purchase at all. So you basically procrastinate the decision altogether and you don't purchase. And for the most part, behavioral frameworks help pull out these kind of biases. So that's just one bias. That's likely the bias that was hindering Shoes of Prey and one of the main reasons that they probably went bankrupt. They were offering their customers with too many choices in terms of customizing their shoes. But there's a lot of frameworks and models that exist for behavioral science. So these models, they can be more generic. For example, the COM-B model is a model that came out of the UK. It's heavily used in health policy and in policy in general. Whereas the Mindspace and EAST models are models that were created by the UK Behavioral Insights Unit that is also often used in behavior change and in policy as well. A health belief model, for example, was a model that was heavily leveraged during COVID-19 vaccination campaigns. And so all of these models exist sort of in the ether of the internet, and you can all tap into them at any time. All of the models are online. The challenge with a lot of these models is that they get really complex if you're not a behavioral science practitioner by trade. So this is an example of one of the models that exists. This is the behavioral drivers model put out by UNICEF. All of these errors are basically telling you none of these factors are influenced in a linear manner, but in fact, all of these indicators and variables influence one another bidirectionally. So as a non-practitioner, it can be very, very complicated and difficult to really understand how to make use of something like this. So at Irrational Labs, we like to use the 3B framework. So this is our way of translating some of these really complex models into more comprehensible ways that non-practitioners can still leverage the psychologies and behavioral science in a way that works amongst many of their other job responsibilities. Those other models are really wonderful if you're a behavioral scientist, but they can be quite challenging to use otherwise. So the 3B framework, we're going to walk through this step by step. But the first step is we identify the key behaviors that we're looking to drive. The second is we look to reduce the barriers to get to that key behavior. So what's sort of hindering someone from doing the behavior we want them to do. And then we look for ways to amplify the benefits. How can we actually increase people's motivation to do the behavior right now in the moment instead of in some future setting? So let's start with the first B. And many of you are probably thinking, this sounds really easy, key behavior. The challenge with the key behavior, the hard part about the key behavior, is it needs to be extremely specific and measurable. And so oftentimes we get clients that will come to us and they'll say, okay, well, we want people to be healthier. We want to improve engagement. These are very broad business outcomes, but they're not behavioral outcomes. So if you were to, sit in a room, and we've done this before where we've asked teams to tell us what they mean by engagement, you'll notice that everybody has a very different definition of engagement. So if no one has the same definition, then any solution that we're creating is actually not driving the outcomes that we're looking for. And so what we try to do first is really narrow in what is the specific measurable behavior that we're looking for. What this means is we're probably translating something like we want to increase sales to something that's specific, like between these dates, December 1st and December 23rd, we want people who visit our website to purchase one item during their first visit, okay? So we've now narrowed the scope. We're not saying we want them to buy, sales anywhere. We want them to buy in store or online. We're saying we want them to specifically, what people who come to our website, we want to purchase our items at least one item. So this is the first step, and it's really important to get this right. And oftentimes we say that you're not doing it right until you actually are starting to have a little bit of a fight within your internal team, because you want to make sure you're as specific as possible. So if you don't have a key behavior, products are a lot less effective. So if you see on the left-hand side, this is a website that exists for a product. And if I were to ask you, what is the key behavior they're looking to drive here, I imagine many of you are probably questioning what exactly that is. There's a lot of calls to action on this web page on the left. It's not clear, if you should be watching the videos, if you should be reading safety information, whereas on the right-hand side, the designers of this website actually are driving you to request a demo. So the key behavior is very clear here. We know exactly what we should be doing. And this is why we always say that when we're designing our products, they're never really agnostic. We're never designing without influencing behavior, either consciously or subconsciously. So the second B in our framework is reducing barriers. And this is when you're actually looking at the journey that someone takes to get to your specific behavior and figuring out what psychological barriers might exist along that journey, as well as logistical pieces of friction. So what we do is we often map out the entire journey, the end-to-end process, from the key behavior all the way from the starting point all the way to our key behavior, which is our ending point. And so we'll have all of the specific nitty-gritty steps, and then we'll overlay the psychologies and the logistical frictions on top of those steps. So when I say logistical friction, I mean something like this. I think we all know that the more form filling that occurs, the more likely we're going to have drop off, right? The more onus we're placing on the user, the more likely we'll see drop off. My question to you, and I'll ask you to place this in the chat, is which one do you think wins? Which I think we all will say B wins, but how much do you think B wins by? D. Okay, we've got some great, very intuitive. Yes, many of you are in fact right. D wins by 50%. That is huge. All that happened is we reduced the number of form filling that were required. Instead of having 4 pieces of information to fill out, people only had to fill out 1 piece of information. And all of a sudden, the number skyrockets. So this is a perfect example of logistical friction. When we're going through a journey or a path that someone's taking, whether it's an onboarding process or it's a checkout process, we are literally going through each of the steps and figuring out how many clicks are occurring, how many pieces of information are we asking people to fill out. And all of those are little logistical barriers or friction points. one way that companies overcome logistical friction is defaults. And these can be really nice, particularly in like low key settings. So Skyscanner, for example, does a very nice job of defaulting you into round trip flights, economy. They're not defaulting you into business class, but you're also not selecting if you want economy or business class. You basically get onto the Skyscanner website and it already knows where your departure is likely going to be from. I used to live in Toronto, for example, and I took this screenshot, and they've already defaulted the economy class as well, and that this is going to be round trip. So this is a really nice, easy way to reduce the number of steps that your users need to take and reduce the amount of logistical friction in interacting with your product. The last thing we do in the 3B model is we amplify benefits. And what we mean by this is we're really trying to overcome people's procrastination. Oftentimes, when we're all, really in deep in building our products, we think these products are beneficial on their own. People should want to sign up for them. A perfect example is we worked with a company that was working a financial services company that was working on a budgeting tool. And we asked them, like, why would someone complete this onboarding process to do their budgeting? The answer was, well, because budgeting is good for them. Budgeting is a good thing. People should do budgeting. It's a really nice idea, but people really act in the moment for benefits, and future benefits are postponed. And the best way that, the best example of this is through toothbrushing. So if I were to ask you, why are people so much more likely to brush their teeth than to floss? You might say, well, because brushing your teeth is better for your hygiene. Actually, flossing regularly is better for your teeth hygiene. But what companies did, like Crest and other toothpaste companies, is they created a social norm around minty tasting fresh breath. And so all of a sudden you have people brushing their teeth, not for the future benefit of having healthy mouth hygiene, but actually for the immediate benefit of having very good tasting breath or smelling breath immediately after you brush your teeth. So this is a perfect example of how we can provide immediate benefits, incentivize a behavior, even though the core role of our product is not actually to create minty fresh breath, it's to help make sure your teeth hygiene is good. So when you're creating your own products, you really want to make sure you're in the right quadrant of this matrix here. You really want to make sure that you have something that incentivizes people to complete an onboarding process, complete a checkout process, anything you're asking them to do. It gives them something in return that day. The closer it is to the behavior, the better. And you really don't want to be in the lower left-hand quadrant, which is an uphill battle of people basically procrastinating using your product. That's the budgeting example, right? Budgeting is good. We all know it's good for us, but it feels like a future me task. I'm not going to do that immediately. A nice example of this in products is Asana. So Asana does a really nice job of creating that immediate benefit, where it's not only leveraging what's known in psychology as completion bias, where we have this innate need and this positive feeling of gratification when we check something off of a list that we have of things to do, but it also sends a message to our teammates indicating that we've completed that task. And it has this really fun unicorn that sort of slides across the screen and creates that positive emotion around getting something done. So that's the immediate benefit that Asana gives you beyond just, making sure that you're staying on track with your projects. Of course, staying on track with your projects is good, but the reason people are likely using this on a day-to-day basis is probably because it's very gratifying to see things get completed and checked off that list, and even more gratifying to see a flying unicorn. So when we're doing behavioral design, we use the 3B model, and this breaks down, even further how we're doing the 3B model, where we're identifying the key behaviors, we're mapping the process, we're identifying the biases, we're creating potential interventions based on the evidence that exists, and then we're testing those assumptions and those interventions that we've developed. So let's walk through how you might actually use this and how we've used this to build products the 3B way. And the first example I'd like you walk you through is one that we did with a weight loss company. So our co-founder, Dan Ariely, and our brilliant managing director, Evelyn, they really wanted to encourage weight loss among Americans. And they, of course, knew there's many, many weight loss companies that already exist. But one of the challenges with a lot of these weight loss companies is that people tend to sign up and then they drop off and they never really see the results that they hoped for. So they wanted to build a product from the ground up that was informed by human psychology and a product that would really motivate people to continue on their weight loss journey. So the key behavior was, if someone is starting a weight loss initiative, how can we ensure that they finish it and they achieve the stated goal they had at the start? And so they went into the second B, which they started to look at barriers, and they mapped out the current behavior of people. And they found out that, oftentimes people have very similar routines or patterns in the morning. They wake up, they go to their bathroom, they brush their teeth. If they're engaging in a weight loss program, they often have a scale in the bathroom. And so this is a really nice visual cue and reminder about your weight that people check in with on a daily basis. So they immediately identified, hey, this environmental cue is already ingrained in people's everyday habits. How can we use the scale as our method or our product to change weight loss programs and encourage people to continue on their weight loss journey? So they focused on the scale as their Trojan horse to having people continue on a weight loss journey. And then they identified barriers to using the scale. So why are current scales ineffective? What makes them ineffective? And of course, the first and foremost thing that we all would say is there's a lot of scale aversion. It never feels good to step on the scale, particularly when you see that you've gained weight, right? Unlike loss aversion, where we say we feel loss is 2 times as much as we feel actual gain. So if I were to give you $100 and then take it away, you would feel 2 times worse about it than if I were just to give you $100. With scale aversion, it's the opposite. So we actually have aversion to the gains that we get. I'm sure we've all felt this. And the challenge with the scale, of course, is that the scale is very, very accurate. So it's telling you down to the decimal point what your weight is. And this feedback is not super helpful because our bodies fluctuate in weight on a daily basis from a variety of things, right? They fluctuate based on hormones, based on time of day that we stepped on the scale, based on muscle mass. So it's not a very helpful indicator of whether or not you are being successful in your weight loss journey. But it's extremely disincentivizing because if you've been working out for a week or you've changed your eating habits and you step on the scale and you actually notice that it's gone up, you're more likely to drop out of the weight loss program you're in because you don't think that what you're doing is working. The reality is that it's just too specific and it takes a long time for us to see those changes in our weight loss. So the scale may not be the most beneficial product to getting people to lose weight. So what they did instead is they designed a scale that had no numbers on it. So instead, people stepped on the scale. It was paired with an app, and they received color metrics that provided them with information and feedback on how they were progressing. So darker gray indicating, you're not on track with your weight loss goals. Green, teal, blue, these colors indicating, oh, you are on track with your weight loss goals. So you never saw a specific number, you just saw where you sat on the progress scale. And this allowed us to collect enough data to understand basic fluctuations in weight. And so that people are not seeing, an increase in 2 pounds when really that's not involved at all with the program they're in. It's just a hormonal thing or the time of day that they're taking it. This was a more accurate read. And in addition to providing this shape at age or this color feedback, we also provide daily user incentives to weigh in. So not only is the scale already embedded into somebody's daily habit of walking into their bathroom where they see the scale and they're reminded to weigh in, but they also got challenges on their phone to complete missions, and they would receive rewards or immediate benefits like a streak or a badge to encourage them to actually step on the scale when they saw it. And what we saw through this program, through this development of the scale, is that people who actually got the shape of scale, they saw an average weight loss of 3.8% of their body weight at 6 months. And at in a year's time, they saw an average weight loss of around 7%. So that's pretty huge. That's a pretty substantial difference than what we see from the more specific weight loss scales. The second company that I want to talk about briefly on how we sort of built out the 3B model and used the 3B model to help with this product is a company called TytoCare. And TytoCare is the first provider that provides care remotely, but the main difference is that they allow you to actually conduct many of your traditional physical exams from your home. So the product comes with a stethoscope and other add-ons and provides you with videos whereby which you can actually do a lot of the measurements. You can look at your heart rate, you can look at your ears, nose, throat, lungs, etc., all from the comfort of your home without ever having to go into a physician's office. And then, of course, you'll consult with the doctor and they'll see the results of your exams that you've conducted, but it's all from the home. And when we worked with TytoCare, we actually helped them with their entire product, their end-to-end process, which you're going to see in a moment. But I'm going to show you just two examples of two key behaviors that we drove with them. And the first is TytoCare, of course, wanted parents who were visiting their website to purchase their TytoCare device during their visit. So again, very specific behavior. We narrowed it down. If someone's coming to the website, how do we get them during that visit to decide to purchase this device? So we mapped out the entire end-to-end journey from becoming aware of TytoCare through, Facebook advertising or word of mouth, all the way to actual use of the product and daily use of the product. And throughout it, we've mapped on the current communications that TytoCare was having with these customers. So we looked really deeply into the decide and buy piece of this particular journey to help increase uptake and purchase of the product. And what we discovered was really that TytoCare is a hard product to decide to purchase because it's asking people to change their mental model of healthcare. So during COVID-19, we were able to very quickly adapt our mental model to healthcare because we had to. We couldn't go in person to meet with a physician, and so we had to adopt telemedicine patterns. But we never had to do exams on our own. It's often very discomforting, perhaps a bit stressful to know that you're the one doing the exam. You don't have any medical experience whatsoever. And TytoCare was trying to push this product that really allowed for users to be autonomous and independent and take control of their healthcare, which can be often very stressful and can be a very different model that people are used to from a health perspective. So when we talk about mental models, what we're really saying is it's a cognitive framework that people use to make sense of the world. So we all have mental models about certain things, and products, whether you know it or not, are consciously building mental models. So if you look at Duolingo here, let's just see, does anyone know what mental model Duolingo is trying to drive through this screen? You can type it in the chat or unmute yourself. Identity, planning, yep, like a little bit of a commitment device. Something around the middle choice heuristic, okay. So for me, what really comes out is that they're creating a mental model of language practicing. That's not, you have to spend 3 hours on the weekend to learn a language, but this is a daily habit that you can do. Insane is just described as 20 minutes per day. That kind of abruptly goes against most people's original mental models of language learning, which is I have to spend multiple hours per day, per week learning a language. Here, Duolingo is trying to convey and create the mental model that this is something you can practice every day, and it's very quick and short, and you can learn the language this way. The next image that you see here is a Bumble or dating app of that sort. And these concentric circles, what's interesting is they're actually trying to send the mental model of, on this dating app, you're going to be speaking with many, many people. So you could create a mental model of you're just going to speak with one person, have a really deep conversation, and determine if you like them. But what this mental model, this app is effectively doing by having these conversations that are blank is it's indicating to you, you're going to have on average 6 or so people that you're going to be speaking with, and that is how you're going to use and interact with our product in our app. So the way that we design our onboarding flow, the way that we design our app really influences the models that people use to understand how your product works. So for TytoCare, to build a mental model around telemedicine, but more than telemedicine, being able to actually do diagnostic tests from the comfort of your home, we created a quiz that was on the website. And the quiz was not a quiz in the sense of you're not eligible at all. Of course, people who were not eligible were not recommended, but most people, unless you didn't have Wi-Fi, would receive the You're Right for TytoCare. What this quiz actually did was it helped people understand what TytoCare was. When would you use it? How would you use it? How frequently should you be using it? And it started to build a mental model around why this is different from traditional telemedicine and why it can be really helpful to have in your home. And we found that the people who actually did end up finishing the quiz, half of them would go on to purchase the device. So this eligibility quiz helped build personalization within the product and TytoCare, and also help people understand what TytoCare was to begin with. We also worked with TytoCare on helping parents use their TytoCare device. So once we were able to help increase and drive product purchases, the next challenge was really once people were purchasing the device, we weren't really seeing many parents use it. So this is really interesting because you'd think if you buy something, you must have seen value in it. So what's going on? Why aren't you using this product that you purchased? So again, we mapped out the journey and we really dove into the setup phase of that journey. What's going on when people receive the product? And what we saw was that basically what happens is they receive a TytoCare delivery or package. They immediately put it somewhere safe in their home where they store their medical devices and equipment and medications. So medicine cabinet, for example. And then their child gets sick. And then they have to remember, oh, yeah, I've got TytoCare. I purchased that a while back and I put it in my medicine cabinet. And then they have to pair their TytoCare device to their phone, which can sometimes be a bit of a lengthy and onerous process, can be a bit stressful, particularly when your child is not feeling well. And so we saw a lot of parents abandoning the pairing part of the process and immediately going back to urgent care or back to the emergency room. They were going back to their old habits. So to help sort of unravel these habits a little bit, we knew we had to help parents remember where they put their device, and we had to help them pair their device earlier on. So to help parents remember where they put their device, we did two things. When parents unboxed their package, they had a little magnet that was provided as a gift. And on the magnet was very clear indication, again, driving home a mental model around when you should be using TytoCare, for what conditions should you be using TytoCare. And on the back of the magnet, there was a place where you could write down where your TytoCare device was located. Eventually, this doesn't show this in this mock-up, but that did get moved to the front for saliency purposes or making it more easy for people to see. But the point is that this is a very nice cue. It's a magnet, so it's embedded into an area of someone's home where they frequent, which is most likely their kitchen, right? That's the purpose of creating the magnet, so that would go on somebody's fridge. So it's a really nice environmental cue and reminder that you have this TytoCare device, you should use it, and this is what you should use it for. The second thing we did to help parents remember was we provided them with this cute little owl. So the goal was that this owl would be something they could provide to their child. And we know that when children are sick, they often like to hold on maybe to a blanket, maybe to a stuffed animal. Regardless, these animals sort of exist in their room or on their bed. And so this can be another nice, quick little subconscious reminder that TytoCare is a product that you have in your home that you can use. And this was a nice way for us to try to really get parents to remember that TytoCare was something that they had purchased. And then to help with the pairing of the device, we placed a sticker on the box that indicated that they were not done with the process yet. So we really wanted parents to activate their device. We made it feel like it was an additional step that was part of the unboxing process. This is very similar to what a lot of banks do with credit cards, where they put the activation sticker on your credit card. We wanted parents to have a very easy, simple action. Call this number to activate your device. This does a few things. First, it addresses the parent in pairing the device early on in what we call in psychology as a cold state of mind. So you're not in a state of panic where your child's not feeling very well and you're worried and you're just trying to get the easiest, find the easiest outlet. That's when you're most likely to rely on your habits. We really wanted to find a time where parents are thinking more rationally, they have a bit more time to spare. And then we wanted to make it really easy for them. So instead of just saying you're going to onboard yourself, you're going to pair the device yourself, we knew that onboarding was a bit complex with this product. And so we wanted them to be walked through the process by a person. So the only action people had to do was they had to call this number. And the immediate benefit that they got was an Amazon gift card, because we know that, people are likely to procrastinate. The amplified benefits part of our model would indicate that we've got to provide some immediate benefit to encourage behavior, particularly behaviors that don't have immediate benefits like this. And so we created a benefit where people received a $50 Amazon gift card if they called to activate. And we saw through the activation card that 56% of members actually said that they were motivated to call as a result of that card, and pairing improved to 90%. So when we started work with TytoCare, their pairing rates were at 30%, and we were able to see a huge jump just by simply putting a sticker or a card on the top of the box indicating that you need to activate your device. So this is sort of what the devices purchased and paired and the visits looked like before we started working with TytoCare. And this is what it looked like afterwards. So this is sort of the impact you can have when you start looking at how you might embed psychology into product development and better understand how your users are interacting with your product. And the 3B model is, again, the model that we really leveraged here to help TytoCare achieve these results. Okay, so I really hope that we walked away with these 3 things today, that you actually know why we need behavioral frameworks and their value. They can be extremely beneficial in helping us better understand and see the whole picture instead of what just our customers are saying in focus group discussions. There's lots that exist. They all exist online. Google Scholar is a really nice way to find some of these models like COMBI. If you even just type it into Google itself, it'll pop up. And lastly, we use the 3B model for product design and product development because for us, we feel like it's a really simplistic but still effective model to help embed behavioral science into product development. So if you are interested in using 3B in the products that you're building, would encourage you to use, we just created this on what's called the Miroverse. It's a 3B template that walks you through the entire process that I just described and allows you to fill in your own product goals and walk through the journey yourself. And with that, I'll say thank you so much, and I'll open it up to questions.
Yeah, so Pauline, really quickly before we get the A's and Q's, I think I have to do a software update because I'm only able to send direct messages, which is annoying. So that said, can you share the Miro link with everybody when you get a chance as I kind of do the commercial here? Because I am not able to do that. I'm only apparently able to have a discussion with Lynn today through direct messages, which I guess is horrible for you, Lynn. That said, you know the drill. This is the part of the show where if you have any questions that you'd like to bring out to Pauline, we'd love to hear them. So all you need to do is raise your hand, your virtual Zoom hand, or just put the question in the chat and I will bring you to the front of the stage so you can talk with Pauline and enjoy all the benefits of her wisdom. Ah, Piki, would you like to come forward and ask that live?
Sure. Thanks, Ryan. So thank you for that great presentation, Pauline. Really appreciate it. I was just wondering, in particular, your background in healthcare, how do we start to tease out various social determinants that we may be assuming or not assuming about various users, and how does it influence the behavioral map that we might be putting together? And I haven't completed the course, so I don't know if this will come up later, but I was just wondering how to account for those.
Yes, absolutely. So in the 3B framework, that would come in the second B, where you're trying to understand the barriers and bottlenecks to the particular behavior. In those other models I shared with you, like the COM-B and the social determinants of health, those models are particularly good at pulling out specific demographic information and segmentation information that might be influencing behavior. So certain social determinants of health, for example. And I would actually encourage you to look at those models. They were built particularly to factor in the social determinants of health. And so we basically embed an element of the COM-B model and of social determinants of health model, or sorry, the behavioral drivers model into the 3B model, so we can understand how are social determinants of health influencing people's health behaviors. And what that also looks like is that the journey is going to look different. So we would encourage you to focus on one particular type of behavior or mindset, for example. Like if you think there are certain social determinants of health that you really want to hone in on, focus on those and build out the journey based off of that, because it will be too complex to do it all in one model or journey. Hopefully that answered your question.
Can I ask a follow-up or not? I can always
usually costs extra, but today we'll give you a bonus.
Sorry. Thank you. Do you recommend like ethnographic studies just to really understand the population and like what we actually do more?
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially with like very complex populations as well, ethnographic research can be really beneficial. You don't want to rely only on ethnographic research. For the example of shoes of prey might be the best way to, again, say that, because not everything that you're going to pull out of that research is going to reflect human behavior in certain decision-making contexts. But it is a really, really nice way to get more insight into what's going on and what people perceive to be is happening. And then I would recommend pairing that with quantitative research as well.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
JP, otherwise known as the Jason Parker. Where are you at, Jason? And what is your profound question?
I don't know about profound. I'm from Vancouver, Canada.
Oh no, more Canadians. Oh my gosh.
We're taking over.
Oh, it's about time.
Pauline, super awesome. I always feel like these sessions really ground me on how much I don't know, and just keeps me grounded, and to learn more. My question is very similar to the last question, and I was busy writing notes, and I think you may have possibly answered it, but when you were talking about the several behavioral models, it reminded me of this saying. I don't know who the attribution goes to, but it's like all models are wrong, but some are useful. And it just reminds me that there are some models that better explain certain contexts, as what you were just talking about, particularly around healthcare and the social determinants of health. But my question is, and I think you may have partially answered this, but I'm not sure, but how do we go about finding out which models are useful, even though they might not necessarily explain the whole thing? Because you've talked about using two different models, the COM-B and the behavioral drivers in the context of social determinants of health. But it makes me wonder about, well, what about, something like the theory of reasoned action? There seems to be some applicability in health behavior with regards to that, but it doesn't always fit perfectly. But there are elements of it that you're like, oh, okay, I kind of get how that works. And so my question is how do I, as a layperson who realizes they don't know much, bring these together to get the insight that we want to actually drive the outcome that we need?
Yes, great question. I am not sure I have the exact answer for you, but you're absolutely right. My main recommendation would be pick the model that you're most comfortable working with and most familiar with. But then also do your research to figure out what does this model not include. So, you know, when we're looking at the 3B model that we use, I just said, like, maybe in the social determinants of health, there's another model that can be really helpful that you can pair with it. So when you're, you know, relying on that one model that you use that you are most familiar with and most comfortable using, look at it in a very analytical approach where you say, this is what this model brings, and this is what this model lacks, and where can I potentially fill those gaps with a different model that exists. So the way that we've done this at Irrational Labs, which is not good advice for like a non-practitioner, is we actually did a full lit review of all the models that exist, their benefits, their pros, their cons, when you should be using each of these different models and pairing it with the 3B model. There's things like the health belief model, for example, very good model in understanding behavior when it comes to health making decisions. It does lack some situational or contextual factors that can then be paired in or brought in by the behavioral drivers model, for example. So I think as you kind of hit the nail on the head, there's no one perfect model. You know, they're great at some things, they're not great at other things. I rely on the model that you're most comfortable with, figure out what it's missing, and then find 1 to 2 models that complement it well and address those missing gaps.
And I'd quickly just extend the metaphor when you said it hits the nail on the head. As someone who's incredibly not handy, sometimes a power drill might cause me to get hurt. So I'll stick with the screwdriver. I mean, so to those ends, whatever model is most useful for you, you want to use, and generative. And I think what Pauline said nicely was this issue of like, you can always nest models. Right. So the nice thing about the 3B is it's so big, broad, and beautiful. Did you see what I did there? That you can nest things in it if you think that's kind of essential. But use a tool that you think is comfortable. No tool does everything in said toolbox. Mine does only have like a hammer, a screwdriver, and like 2 screwdrivers. Like there's a Phillips and a flat, not to show off everybody, but you know what I'm saying. With that, to Amy. Amy, where are you and what is your profound question today?
Hi, Pauline. I totally appreciate this presentation. It's been so great. I am from Minneapolis, Minnesota, so I'm close to Canada. Does that put me in the club? I mean,
honorary.
Yeah, it's freezing.
Oh, we actually think of people from Minnesota to be very much Canadian. Just saying.
Okay, good.
It's true. It's true.
Okay. Well, good. I do have a sauna, so then maybe that puts me in the category. So
that was very over the top of you. Wow.
Well, you know, sometimes we got to be on Fridays. Okay, so my question for you is, I work for a digital startup, and we're launching a new product, and it's for fall prevention. And the kind of the conundrum with this is people that usually have a fall are usually fearful of having a fall, that are in the older kind of population. And so rather than like how to breach this to how to like speak as far as context and languaging, how to reach out to them without putting like that fear in there, because oftentimes like I've been just doing a bunch of research, is that most of the people that do fall are people that are afraid of falling. So how do you offer a product without talking about it or like creating fear, but then you have to say what it is? Like even the word fall prevention, people don't like that. So I'm just curious, like how within the healthcare realm in which you've been in, I'm so curious how do you navigate things like this, and how do you, when you're moving forward, we're definitely playing around with language, but I'm just curious if you have any other insights or ideas.
Yeah, it's a great question. I have a few hypotheses or maybe some suggestions. Without knowing too much about your research, it's hard to give really concrete recommendations, but I would consider how you might frame the product in a games way. So instead of focusing on the feature of the product, which is it helps you not fall or helps you if you're at risk of falls, focus on flipping it and reversing it. So maybe you can say something like safe walking, or I mean, that's a horrible name, but the idea being like, instead of focusing on what it's preventing explicitly, can you reframe it so that it's more positive and gain framed messaging approach, or it's saying something like healthy walking, or this is your connection tool. So, you know, if something does happen, you're connected to a family member who can come and support, or connected to a neighbor or something like that. So I think about ways in which you can focus more on the benefits of the product and less on sort of the more fully charged terms like falling.
Fall prevention, like stabilized balance or something like that, or
It's confident and sure in your steps.
mm-hmm.
Stand tall, stand sturdy, whatever. I mean, this is the
exactly
mouthwash, right? This is the mouthwash thing. Like,
Yeah.
don't get cavities, but also you'll be upright and wonderful, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, and think about the immediate benefit there, like as exactly as Ryan is saying about like comfortably sturdy or whatnot. He's good at the names. Like think of what is like the immediate positive benefit we can give people, because obviously like a fall is not a positive benefit. So yeah, comfy, sturdy walking, or whatever. Ryan's got some good names out there, but that's a really nice reframing.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know what an interesting model is to look at there. Not that I buy them all the time, but I always look at the men's Depends at like I see them at Costco. See, that's also a Minnesota thing. That was for you, Amy. But but like they're not like don't wet yourself. They're like feel secure in your day. Like, you know, I mean, and even tampons as well have the same thing. Like feel safe, you know, that you can move around. So I think those are good analogs to maybe look at. I didn't know we would just devolve to talking about Depends, but you're welcome, everybody. And also, Amy, I think this is a gratuitous plug. In December, we'll have open drop-in hours with Kristen, but if you have a landing page and you want to get some feedback, reach out to me, send me a DM, or my email is just ryan@irrationallabs.com, and we can get you in the queue, and Kristen can give like 15 minutes, right? So most startups don't have the kind of seed funding where they're going to get our full consulting package, which is why we have this membership thing, right? Where people can get like a good 15-minute video to bring back to the team with some new ideas. So definitely reach out on that. Do we have another? Oh, we have Oliver. Oliver. Oh, Schwanke, what's up? Hey, how are you?
Hi. Yeah, I'm in Paris. Still in Paris.
Cool, cool. I just wanted to say Schwanke. It made me feel.
Yeah, I know that. You always do this to me. I just
right after the text thing. Look at how regressive my brain is. Carry on, Oliver.
I was just wondering about some operational thoughts or ideas. And when I looked at the idea of simplifying a web page, for instance, or the data entry, I was just a little bit concerned about, basically when I use Google, my Google Chrome, basically everything pops up when I register the information. So I was just not really clear if this actually helps me, or how I do actually make anything better if I want to have a better call for action, since everything pops up right now. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying. So it's interesting. Not every time, it's not always appropriate to reduce logistical friction, and that might be a nice example. Another example of it is if you want people to really stop and consider and think about a specific action, it actually can be more beneficial for you to add friction points. So adding an extra place where they put in information, or getting them to make a selection in a forced choice option, right? Where they can't just skip, but they have to say yes or no. So not in every scenario is going to be reducing the logistical friction appropriate. So that's a great point. It really is dependent on what you're trying to drive.
Yeah, just maybe to make it really clear, just the example you gave with 4 entry fields and just the one field you actually use. Basically, if I use Google right now and I just type it in, it fills out everything right now. So basically, there's no benefit in either choosing one of the options you're actually explaining.
Right. Okay. I see what you're saying. So you're saying because it's already filtering in everything.
It's
feels like it's going.
it's filled out automatically. So basically, if I type in the O already, the rest of my name follows and the email follows. And well, the difference is not there basically. So the friction is really almost non-existing, right?
Yeah. In that sense, you're right. There's a lot less friction. I would still imagine or hypothesize that there's some level of perceptual psychological friction where you just see more forms to fill. And even though Google is auto-populating that information, you're probably quickly scanning to make sure that that's accurate. So those are still small, tiny steps that you're asking the user to do. That you're absolutely right. The onus is relieved because Google's auto-filling, but it still feels like a little bit more because you're doing a quality control check than if you're just filling in one piece of information.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Awesome.
You're welcome.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we're a little bit over time, which is not the end of the universe. I thought that Lynn was the only person I could message, but apparently, Chloe, I just sent you Lynn's thing. So, Lynn, we're out of time. So please go over to Slack, #AskABehavioralScientist. Drop your question. We'll get you an exciting video answer, I promise. And also go check the #general channel over there with today's drop of the weekend review, all kinds of exciting resources for you to check out. So ladies and gentlemen, people have already been using the chat to say, thank you, Pauline, thank you, Pauline, thank you, Pauline. But thank you, Pauline, that was fantastic. There were tons of compliments over there, mostly about your presentation, a little bit about your hair.
Thank you.
And then people were like, and she's such a great Canadian, and it just got ridiculous. So I'm just paraphrasing, you know.
That is too funny. Thank you, everyone. That was a lot of fun and really appreciate you joining us on your Friday.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. And Lynn, please come ask us over in Slack your question. We'd love to carry on. So, all right, everybody, take care. Have a wonderful Vulcan End Day. All right. Bye-bye.